Now remember when we did that last analysis, the one that lasted 2 videos, I said a couple of times that a great way to end a phrase is to go from 5 to 1, right? And if we look at this, our chord progression all laid out, here's our 5, and that's 1. Now that 5 is the only place in the chord progression that a dominant 7 occurs, right? Which is really is very interesting to us, because that means that that dominant 7 gives us an extra helping hand on moving to 1. Okay, so 5 dominant 7 moving to tonic or 1 is one of the most common things to do ever in all music ever. 5 to 1. So what is a dominant 7th chord? Again, it's a major triad with a minor 7th, right? So if we look at G to F on our keyboard, here's G, here's an octave higher of G, go down 1 whole step, that gets us to F, and that's what's happening right here, okay? So let's look at that. Let's draw that out over here. Okay, so here's a G major. And then let's go to 1 right after it. Okay, not 1, 7. So first of all, the way we notate a dominant 7th chord is a little confusing. What we do is we write just the letter 7. So to call something a 7th chord, if you don't say major 7th or minor 7th, if you just say 7th, it assumes dominant 7th chord. In other words, to call something like G7, which is what we're looking at here, is a shorthand way to say dominant 7. So that can be a little confusing. If you just see the letter 7 or the number 7 and nothing else like a major or a minor with it, then it means dominant 7. Okay, it's a shorthand that we use. Sometimes you might see DOM7, but very, very rarely. Almost always you just see the number 7. And that means we're looking at a 7th chord. So here we have G7 and then 1. Listen to how smoothly these go into each other. And then after we hear this, I'm going to show you an even smoother way that it works. Listen. Right? It feels like this wants to land down here. Now, if we change our inversions a little bit here, we can make this even better. I'm going to add another C at the bottom. Listen to this. Right? It sounds even better. I like to use the analogy here that when you play a dominant 7th chord, it's kind of like throwing a box of light bulbs in the air. And then you're just waiting. And then when you hear this chord, it's like they finally hit the ground. You know, it's like you're in this incredible suspense right here because you're waiting for this to happen. There's even an old story about Mozart. There's a story that Mozart's dad, to wake him up in the morning. So apparently they had this like 3-story house in Vienna, I think. And when Mozart was a little kid, his dad would sit at the piano on the 1st story and Mozart slept on the 3rd story. This is the way I've heard this. And his dad would just very kind of quietly play a dominant 7th chord and then stop and wait. And then Mozart would come running down the stairs and do that because he just needed to hear it resolve. That G7 chord is just rude if it doesn't resolve to the 1 or the tonic, right? Now, the reason that I did this inversion of our C major chord, so this is still a C major chord, C, E, G, and there's another C in there. I just inverted it, and that's okay. The reason I did it is because what we like to hear in this is we like to hear this F fall down to this E and this B resolve up to this C. Right? Those are the kind of tendency tones in this chord that want to go a certain direction. And then to really hit it home, we put the root at the bottom again, just to make it really feel like it's resolving. And that gives us that really definitive 5-1 sound. So those are dominant seventh chords. We see them all the times at the ends of pieces, the ends of phrases. Whenever we're trying to reestablish the key, whenever we want to say, hey, the key is C in this case, we'll play a bunch of G7s and then a C. And that basically says, hey, we are home when we get that C. You hear this at the end of a symphony a million times when you hear the timpani go boom, 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 boom. That's them going 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, and then that's the end of the piece. That's how those old symphonies end, like a lot, like most of the time. So we're going to talk more about this in the next class. In the future, we're going to be talking about how chords function, what chord progressions lead to each other, what chords work well together, and things like that. So hold on for that, but for now, consider this a preview to that. So one thing I said just a second ago is that you are rude if you do not resolve this, a 5-7 chord, to a 1 chord. But let's imagine that you didn't. What would happen if you didn't? And specifically, could you make a whole genre of music devoted to that 5-7 chord, that dominant 7 chord, not resolving? And the answer is, of course you can. And people have done it for many, many years. It is called the blues. The blues is full of non-resolving dominant 7th chords. Let's take a quick look at that in the next video.